So this is a great question that Jay McCoy just asked over on YouTube that we will get answered for a YouTube video today. So playing in the PvE part of the game means I don't have to worry about other players at all. Are there no consequences if something happens with other players in the PvE section? Well, you can't impact other players in the PvE section. So we're all running around the world. There's 40 players on a siege. So the maximum amount of players you are ever going to interact with in any given siege situation is going to be potentially up to 39 other people that are on your siege. So when you're out running around in the game world, Haga Basin South, let me get my controller. All of these story zones that we're exploring. So starting with Haga Basin South down here, the Western Vermilius Gap, Eastern Vermilius Gap, all of these zones are PvE zones, aka it's the players versus the environment. So you are never going to impact another player, and they are never going to impact you. Your bases are safe. Your stuff is safe. The exception to that are shipwrecks, which are clearly marked as green icons. The very first shipwreck you do is safe because it's the tutorial shipwreck, but after that, all shipwrecks are open PvP areas. You will be told when you reach a shipwreck, it will give you a big warning on your screen that says you are entering a PvP area. Outside of those limited PvP shipwrecks and the big opened deep desert at the end of the game, the player versus player is non-existent. So there is no impact on your gameplay, and you cannot impact another player. The exception to that would be, and I think someone mentioned this in chat, when you go into the Imperial testing stations, or if you are exploring one of the caves, if another person has come through and um, taken out the NPCs will not be there for you to kill. You will have to wait for them to respawn. The boxes of loot will still be there. Um, at least that's what I've seen. But you cannot, like you'll have to wait for the next wave of NPCs to spawn. So if you have a kill quest to kill 10 bandits and someone else just came through and killed the bandits, you would have to wait for the bandits to come back before you can then kill the bandits and get your quest credit. That would be the maximum effect another player can have on you and your enjoyment of the game in the totality of the Dune Awakening storyline. Um, that's how that works. So PvE is completely separate from the PvP side of things. So if you go into the shipwrecks, though, that's a different story because the shipwrecks are open PvP. So even if you go into a shipwreck with a group, and they showed this off, Funcom showed this off in their video on combat a couple weeks back. When you go into a shipwreck with a group, there is some there are limited PvP actions that can be taken if you're in a group with a player. Also, if you're in a guild with a player, there's a lot of limitations on PvP versus group mates and guild mates because they're assuming you're on the same side. So when you go into a shipwreck, you're accepting the risk and you're accepting the reward. Like you're taking the risk with the rewards. So the the PvP component in this game is 100% consensual, and that goes back to the laws of Canley, which are a book law related to why players can't attack. And they do explain that the first time you get to Anvil Base in the game, and you're talking to you're meeting the faction representatives for the first time. They have a cutscene where they explain the laws of Canley and why they are not attacking each other and killing each other on sight, even though they are from opposing factions, because they're in a safe zone, which is the trade hub, the Anvil Station, and then that pretty much affects the entire world. So you don't have to worry about other players at all. There's nothing that can happen with other players in the PvE section other than, like I mentioned, someone might have killed mobs just before you, and you just might have to wait 10, 15 minutes for mobs to respawn. Um, the The PvP Deep Desert map is completely different from the PvE side of the game. So that's completely different. The only other thing I would say too is that like your bases, everything is protected. So like my base, as an example, like um, the default permissions on your base, and I think I could just hit the door here if I'm not mistaken. The default permissions on your base are so that only people who are your associates can access it, which means no other player can do anything with your base. However, only if the shields are up. If you let your shields go down, like if you forget to put um, fuel cells in your generators and your shields come down, other players absolutely can come into your house and they can go into your storage containers and they can take your shit. But that's on you if you didn't keep your shields up. That's why it's very important to make sure that you're always keeping your um, generators running with plenty of fuel. Um, so if you're anticipating that you're going to be going offline for a week or something, like you're going to go on vacation or you won't be able to play for a week, make sure you have stocked your fuel generators with enough fuel cells to keep things going. Because if you run out of juice and your shields go down, other players can come into your base and take your shit. So that would be the only instance of players being able to impact your gameplay in the PvE part of the world, and that's just because you forgot to do your shields. But you can stockpile. I think right now it's 3 weeks, like 20 or 21 days. I don't think I have enough. Let's see how high I can get. I'm up to yeah. It's almost capped out. I'm at 19 days. 15 hours, and it's almost capped out. So it looks like it's probably 20 days. So like 3 weeks. You can put enough fuel in the. Looks like it'll be 500 fuel cells
Sector
probably.
weather alert. A large
Um,
sandstorm is approaching.
by the way, speaking of sandstorms, that's the other reason you don't want to let your shields go down, and also never leave your vehicles out, because your vehicles can get destroyed by sandstorms. But that's the other thing too. Your vehicle is protected. Um, if I go to the manage vehicle, you can go to the permissions. Permissions list is only you can affect your vehicle, but you can give friends access to your vehicle. Like I could add Bubbleonia. I could give Bubbleonia access to my vehicle, but random players can't touch your vehicle. So your vehicles can never get stolen. They can never get destroyed by other players. They can get destroyed by the sandstorms though. So it's very important that you either have your vehicle parked inside, or you're using the vehicle tool, um, the vehicle backup tool to spawn and despawn. So like I will despawn my vehicles as soon as I am going off on an adventure, and I put it in my tool. That way, I don't have to
Sector
worry about my
weather alert.
vehicles
A
accidentally
large
getting destroyed.
sandstorm is approaching.
Um, so yeah, you don't have to worry about other players at all. In terms of your enjoyment of the game, there's no consequences because you can't impact their enjoyment. We were actually in a dungeon earlier today during the stream, and a shielded guy came running down the corridor, and I thought it was we were in a one of the Imperial testing stations, which are the PvE dungeons, and they were charging at me, and I thought it was a shielded mob, so I like laid down like 3 clips, and I thought the mob was bugged because he wasn't taking any and his shields weren't going down, and then I realized, oh, that's another player, because name tags are turned off by default, and also when you have your weapons drawn, there's no tooltip on other players. If you want the tooltip to pop up with another player, you have to have your weapon sheathed. Laws of Canley. Once your weapon is sheathed, you then get a tooltip when you hover over another player. But if your weapon is drawn, you don't see a name tag, and you don't. So it's like, is this another player? Is this an NPC? I'm like loading 3 clips into the guy before I realize, oh, his shields aren't coming down. It's not a bug. That's another player. Oops. So,
Sector weather alert. A large sandstorm
yeah.
is
No,
approaching.
there's no PvP anywhere in the game, Falcons, other than consensually designated areas. Shipwrecks, deep desert. That's where the spice blows are happening. Is the deep desert. So, like the big spice blows and everything else. So yeah, PvP in this game is a separate. Like I had someone trying to argue with me this morning on a YouTube video who's like, it's not true that you can solo this game because there are quests that send you into PvP areas. And I was like, no, there's not. There are contracts that send you into PvP areas, but there are no quests related to the story of the game that send you into PvP areas. The quests of the story game, the story campaign of this game is 100% solo, 100% PvE, single player RPG. There's a survival component and a crafting component. That's the game I'm playing. There are contracts you can take at the trade stations that are not part of the story of the game. Those are separate fetch quests, random things. They are stories, but they're not part of the campaign of the game. Those contracts can lead you into PvP areas, but they are clearly marked as such. And so you make a decision as to whether or not you take those quests or don't take those quests. Same thing with the lands rad in the end game. There are PvP missions that the land rad gives out, and then there's PvE missions that the lands rad gives out. So it's always going to be a consensual PvP situation. You are never forced to do PvP if you don't want to. Other players will never impact your enjoyment unless you want them to impact your enjoyment. And you cannot impact another player in any way, shape, or form unless they've forgotten to keep the shields running at their base, in which case, amen, that's fair game. That's fair game at that point. Anyway, that'll be a good YouTube video to clip out. So for those of you watching after the fact, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Daily streams at 5 a.m. Central on YouTube and Twitch. There's a ton of guides in the playlist down below for Dune Awakening. And I've got like 8,000 videos on the channel because I play a lot of video games. So check them all out. See you, Reinhardt. Like Durbrom is saying too, PvP in this game is not that big of a deal because there's only 40 players per map. Not even per map, for 40 players per siege, which is your local server. Now the Deep Desert has hundreds of players. I think they may have even said thousands of players. I honestly haven't. Don't quote me on that because I have not paid attention to the PvP talk from Joel and the team because I don't care about PvP. So that's an area of the game that I'm not very knowledgeable about. But I do know they've said hundreds, if not thousands, of players can play in the um, Deep Desert. I'm pretty sure they said the other day that the Deep Desert is 10 times the size of the Haga Basin, um, which, if I'm not mistaken, the entirety of this is the Haga Basin. Like, all of this makes up the Haga Basin. Haga Basin South, the Haga Rift, like this is all the Haga. Like this whole map that we would explore here is part of the Haga Basin, and it's broken up into these zones. And they have said that the Deep Desert, I believe, is the, like the Haga Basin is 10% of the Deep Desert, like the size of. So the Deep Desert is much bigger, much bigger. Yes, the Deep Desert is shared by all the Sieges in a world. Correct, Grimeye. So um, that's when you get to hundreds, if not thousands, of players all coming together in that same space for massive, constant war, PvP, guild versus guild. But again, and I think they just said too that there is a section of the Deep Desert that is PvE only, and that's where they're allowing places to set up bases and things of that nature so that they are sort of like staging areas before you go out into the Deep Desert.